like a feather-filled pillow discussion group. This is The Talk Down.
Hi, I'm Adam Yenser, and I own an authentic piece of the Hindenburg.
Is it like a human bone or something? Or?
You'll have to tune into the subscriber portion to find out. Although if it was a piece of human bone, I would have said, I own an authentic piece of a Hindenburg victim.
That's true. Or is there bone lodged in it? I don't know. I'm curious. I'm sure it's really exciting. It sounds really...
Yeah.
I'm Ethan Nicolle, and I once made people very hungry for pizza with my farts.
Oh.
I'm going to tell that story.
Can I not be a part of this?
Probably. If you've followed me on other podcasts, you've heard it's like my party story.
Is it?
I never go to parties.
You never go to parties?
No, I hate parties.
Really?
But it's like a story that it's one of my funnier stories.
Okay. Well, so you'll have to tune into the subscriber portion.
Yeah, it's going to subscribe report. You're going to hear about how I got people to eat pizza by farting.
And this is our very special 17th episode.
Well, we don't know if it's 17th because this is going to be a floater episode.
Okay.
Which is actually going to mess up the numbering. We'll figure it out once the time comes. But so we're recording this out of sync.
Because the last one, we were recording this as a second episode late night, so not everything will be topical in this one.
So this one
will still be very relevant.
What we're doing tonight is we're going to interview each other, I think, because we're gonna just talk to each other.
We'll get to know each other a little better.
Because in truth, me and Adam met and just started working together.
Yeah.
And it's pretty been a relationship. And we aren't real friends.
We don't really hang out a whole lot outside of this, except 5 minutes beforehand.
Yeah. Well, we hang out at the bar, the sports bar.
Yep.
And we stare at our computers and work on the notes.
And we're very concentrated.
But I don't like
in
nothing.
The zone. We're in the zone. We're just kind of glaring at each other and judging what each other write in the notes.
So I want to do a deep dive interview with you, Adam. I want to find out about you.
Uh-oh.
And you want to find out about me?
I want to find out about you.
Should we take turns or should we do just half and half?
Let's just see how. Do you have prepared questions? Because I don't have any prepared questions. All right. So you're born into a poor, medium, or rich family? Medium, definitely.
Medium,
yeah.
Okay.
I grew up in a town called Macungie, Pennsylvania.
Macungie?
Yep.
It sounds like a kid walks up crying, like in a southern accent kid.
Yeah.
What happened? And he's like, I got hit right in Macungie.
So it's funny because there was a bank that moved into our town when I was younger, and they didn't know how to say the name of the town.
How do you spell that?
Macungie.
Okay.
And there was a bank that
like fungi.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this bank moved into town, and they didn't know how to say the name. So when you called up the bank and got their voicemail, it would say, you've reached, I don't know what it was at the time, like Wachovia Bank or something. Mm-hmm. It was like, you've reached Wachovia Bank, Macungie branch. They'd say Macungie. But yeah, that's a small little town in Pennsylvania, but it is where the production facilities for Mack trucks are. Oh. So all the Mack trucks in the country are made in Macungie, Pennsylvania. And that's where my dad worked growing up. He's a draftsman for Mack.
Is that what the Mack is for, Macungie?
It's not actually. Okay. It's a coincidence that it's there, yeah. Mm.
My wife grew up in Pennsylvania where the Slinky was invented.
Oh, really? Where is that in Pennsylvania?
It's like, I know it, but I remember how in the last episode I forgot everything?
Yes.
It's happening again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You just forget things about your wife.
It'll pop up.
You forget things about your wife, though.
No, everything. I forgot famous movie stars. I can remember Ryan Gosling's name.
I just like trying to get you in trouble with things you say about your wife on the podcast.
It's going to come to me. Oh, I almost had it. Oh. I think there's like an O in there.
Jeez.
If I start to say it, it's going to come out.
I don't know if I knew the Slinky was invented in Pennsylvania or not. But no, my dad worked at Mack Trucks for almost his whole life, and then my mom.
You got a trucker dad? I never knew that.
So he was a draft.
I figured you had like a more upper class.
So this is just I'm the first person in my family to get into like the entertainment industry at all.
Okay. Same here.
I come from a long line of.
Oh no, that's not true. My dad was an opera singer.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh well, that's cool. I want to hear about that. But I come from a long line of roofers and truckers. Both my grandparents were, both my grandfathers were roofers. Two of my uncles were roofers. Me and most of the
not roofiers, roofers.
What is a roofier?
Like they roofie people?
No, they didn't do that as far as I know. But I don't know.
You never know.
I never asked them. But I would help my uncle roof a little bit when I was a teenager. And then my dad worked, design, like a draftsman for Mack trucks. So he worked in the,
he's like designing actual trucks.
Yeah, like different parts and pieces for them. Oh. They'd get specific orders. Like the one he always told me about that I remember, the Lincoln Tunnel in New York. There's a very specific type of maintenance vehicle that they need to go into those tunnels that can kind of turn around in there with, and it has to have, a specific sort of turning radius and be designed a certain way. So they'll have orders for it might be like a fire truck or a garbage truck or a specific type of maintenance truck. And then they would also work on, the big rigs that you see all over the country, those Mack trucks. But yeah, he'd help drop the designs for them. And now my youngest brother, Eric, he still works at Mack Trucks. He was on the assembly line as a safety inspector for a while, and now he works an office job.
You're like a black sheep that doesn't work on trucks?
I'm the
How many siblings you got?
I have 2 younger brothers. My other brother, Dustin, is a teacher. He teaches middle school science and history. And he's
the most suicidal of the group.
Whoa. I don't think so. I'm the one who does comedy.
That's true. That's true.
Anyway,
think of that. Yeah,
anyone's going to end there.
Suicidal, that's true.
But my brother Dustin, he is also very much into performing in that he's an actor. He was a really good actor in high school, and he and his wife do a lot of community theater performances. I'm so jealous. He was just in the
inseparable.
He was just in this SpongeBob musical, a community production of it. He got
like a legit one, like
it was. Have you ever seen SpongeBob the musical?
No.
It is one of the best musicals I've ever seen in my life. It was on Broadway for a while, and I went to see it when it was there.
That's one of the gayer things you ever said.
It is so good. Are you not a SpongeBob fan?
No, he's fine.
All right. Why am I gay for like the SpongeBob music?
I think SpongeBob came out as gay, right?
No, I think he's one that they try to pin down as gay. Like when it's Pride, they'll post like SpongeBob with a rainbow, and it'll say Happy Pride. People have tried to claim he's gay. But
you think he's
no? He's as straight as Tim Walz.
I think he's asexual.
He's an icon of masculinity, like Tim Walz. Just positive masculine energy.
Sponges in the boys' bathroom.
But no, the SpongeBob musical is fantastic, and I wish I would have got to see my brother in it. But he's doing Sleepy Hollow next. He's playing Ichabod Crane. So
is this like his job?
He's a teacher, but he does community theater because it's an interest for him. He's good at it. Yeah. Then I grew up in Pennsylvania. My mom worked for Penn State, and I wound up going to Penn State, as I've talked about. I think.
Oh yeah, my wife's dad, my father-in-law, works at Penn State.
Oh, okay. Which at the main campus?
He works in the whole HVAC. He runs the whole HVAC system.
Is he Jerry Sandusky?
No, he's not. Horrible. Did Jerry Sandusky run the HVAC?
No.
Is he known for that?
No, he is known.
I thought he was like a coach or something.
He was known for a lot of things, but not running the HVAC.
The whole, because they have some kind of system there for science or something they do where they need very specific. But he works on that whole. It's a full-time job.
Now I'm going to throw you some questions.
Please.
Where did you grow up, Ethan? And what did your family do? You said your dad was an opera singer.
So before I was born, my dad has a crazy history. Okay. The whole interview could be about him and not about me at all. Because I think my mom was his 4th or 5th wife. I never get clear on how many that is. But I know that he has a history where he was homeless a bunch. He was an almost famous opera singer singing at the Metropolitan Opera in New York.
Wow.
He has old newspaper clippings of him singing without mics to full giant auditoriums of people. He has this crazy trained, very loud voice, but my dad's always been kind of he comes from a very poor, not just poor, but you hear about those what's the Great Depression, that time.
Yeah.
You see these kind of drunkard and brawler families where the women are getting shared and all these
Now you said he was homeless.
Battles are happening.
Was he a hobo that rode the rails and
I don't know if he ever rode the rails, but he definitely Yeah, I mean,
a drifter.
Because he was born in Washington, Okanagan, little tiny town in Washington, and he wanted to be an opera singer, and he hitchhiked his way to New York. Wow. So he went all the way across the United States.
That's amazing.
And then he ended up getting into this girlfriend who was the heir to this crazy museum level quality furniture company, a chain. So these are
Is that the name of it? Come to the museum level quality furniture company.
It was some famous chain of where a rug would cost $30,000.
Yeah.
Crazy level. And so she lived in a house full of this kind of furniture and extravagance, traveling the world together, doing all kinds of crazy drugs and whatever. And they were in some weird cult together. And
they sound very bohemian.
Yeah, that was the time. Yeah, very bohemian. And we found out later that my dad during that time had a one-night stand. And I only found out like 6 years ago or so that I have an older sister.
Really?
We found her on Ancestry.
Oh, man.
Through DNA.
Is that cool, that experience? Like,
it's pretty cool. There's a weirdness to it, but
there's a weirdness that leads to that situation. Like, like my parents, they stayed married together, their whole life. They're still together. And, on one hand, well, like not on one, but it's like you're glad your parents are together. But it must be a fascinating experience to find that you have a relative out there, like a brother or sister that you never knew of.
Yeah, I never had an older sibling, so that was kind of interesting. And also finding how similar she is to us. Like how much she looks like my dad, for one thing.
Oh, really?
And it's interesting how she's a very artsy person in her family. She was not at all. Like she did not fit in with them at all. She fits very well in with us.
I see.
She's real strange.
So there's a genetic.
There's definitely some component there to her personality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we look alike in a lot of ways. There's definitely a resemblance for her and my dad. And it was cool because
do her farts smell like pizza?
We'll get to that. Probably depends what you eat.
I hate myself for bringing that up again, but I had to.
So anyway, yeah. So my dad was crazy. So luckily he didn't have. So when he was kind of getting, in your brains, I say I'm losing all the words. And your brain starts with dementia. So when my cousin is the one who's really into, the Ancestry.com DNA tests and everything. I had brought up that I think Dad mentioned he had a kid at some point. He thinks is out there.
Oh wow! So you had heard rumors of this.
He'd said it. He'd just bring it because I had at one point I interviewed my dad because I had wanted to write a book about his life and then my life and my little brother's life, kind of a book about the question of talent within our family, because I think talent is very fascinating. People say you're born with it or do you develop it or whatever. Because my dad came from this poor family that lived in a little shack. And, became this nearly famous opera singer. And then what me and my brother kind of went through with Axe Cop and with me being from a small town and kind of working towards my dreams and just like there's just interesting stories with my family. So I had to ask him a ton of questions and I had all these answers and I found out. He said, yeah, they might have a daughter, a son, or I can't remember.
Wow.
And so then later when they found our sister, my dad had this kind of dumbfounded look on his face. He's like, oh, huh. It's like, well, there might be another one then. So I'm pretty sure there's a son too. So
that's hilarious.
His life is so.
Did you ever find any other ones or
no?
Okay. Do you think is there possibly still other ones?
I don't know because he's getting enough dementia that like it was hard to tell what was real and what was not.
I see.
What he was like, and I couldn't tell, but he was just cognitive enough. It was very sweet when he got to meet my sister Lisa, and they got to finally meet in person, and he was so sweet to her, and it was really cool.
Nice. And you have other siblings too then?
Yeah, so I grew up with two younger brothers, Noah and Isaiah, and then my dad, my parents divorced when I was 8. Oh, he asked me where I grew up. I didn't answer any of that.
Well, but this is much more fascinating.
Yeah, I tried to go to the fascinating
stuff. Then you got into, like the opera singer and the finding missing siblings.
Right. So I grew up with two brothers. My parents divorced when I was 8. My dad moved away, just left when I was like 11. So that does some damage, having your dad just leave you. And then, so we were raised by a single mother, really kind of the bulk of our like, my dad was not around a lot even when he was there. So, we really were raised by our mom, which is very common in our day and age, the 80s and 90s. But he moved off to Moses Lake, Washington. He remarried a woman who was 20 years younger than him. And she was actually great for him. My dad was always very handsome for his age and also very immature. And she was pretty mature for her age. They're a good balance. She was the best thing that ever happened to him. They had 3 more kids.
You did the best thing.
Besides me, clearly. So they had 3 more kids, and the last one was a complete surprise. They thought they were too old to have kids. It was over. They had 2 girls back to back, and then like 6 years later, my dad was when my sisters were born. Like it was when I graduated high school. My dad was 40 when I was born, so and he had to be like 50, nearly 60 when he had the 2 daughters. So then he was hitting 70, getting up there towards 70 when Malachi was born.
Oh wow!
So Malachi, my brother, I created Axe Cop with. That was the thing. He's 20. We're 24 years age apart. I'm old enough to be his dad. So just the weirdness of that whole situation.
Yeah. I knew it was your brother that you created with it. I didn't realize there was
he grew up with a very old dad. I mean, he watched his dad wither away his whole life and then die when he was like 16, 17. It's like, I don't know what that does to you. And I feel bad for him going through that.
Funny podcast.
Yeah, hilarious. Hey, they're getting to know us. This is getting to know us. We aren't just funny guys. We're real guys. Somebody die near
no.
Death?
Well, I mean, I've had all of my grandparents have now passed away. And then I've had a few aunts and uncles who have passed. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. When did you know you want to be a comedian?
By the time I was in high school, I think I knew that I wanted to get into comedy writing. I started
with stand-up. The thing, like, what's your if you could just live out your dream career, what is
my initial goal when I was in high school and I wanted to when I decided I wanted to be a comedy writer and that's what I wanted to pursue. I grew up, I always kind of loved comedy. I went through different phases, but I had other career interests. I think I've talked about it on here before. When I was a real little kid, I was a butterfly farmer. I became an expert on butterflies. And to this day, like, it's something that fascinates me. And there are people that are butterfly farmers or travel around the world studying them. I thought I'd want to be like a scientist that studies them for a living. And then I went through a very brief phase when I was a kid where I thought I'd wanted to be a doctor. I think a lot of kids go through like a phase kind of like that. And then you find out how much work it is and you're like, ugh, no.
Yeah. Catheters and stuff.
Yeah. And then for a while I was interested in like special effects artists. I always thought it'd be very cool to kind of get in that. And I remember I read a lot of books about that during a phase when I was a kid because I was kind of interested in how you become a special effects artist. But in my like early like preteens and teens, I got just very into comedy. I loved, even as a little kid, I loved comedy. I would watch Johnny Carson when I was like a toddler.
Yeah, you're pretty young.
Yeah. And then my mom says I used to beg to stay up and watch. I'd say, can I watch the monologue? And there were other like words that I couldn't say at that time, but I could say monologue.
Monologue.
Yeah. So then I was very into, as I got older, Monty Python, Saturday Night Live. I watched all the stand-up specials on Comedy Central, Kids in the Hall, Upright Citizens Brigade, all sketch comedy and stand-up. I loved it. And when a lot of people were watching like sitcoms and stuff, like I never watched Saved by the Bell. I never watched Full House. I never watched Boy Meets World. Everything I watched was just Comedy Central, like morning to night. And so when I first got interested in comedy writing, the writing for SNL was like the dream. It was like, if I could be an SNL writer, that's what I would.
But you didn't want to be the guy on the screen.
It's interesting because I never wanted to be like a cast member on Saturday Night Live. And to this day, I'll do like on-air bits when I work for shows, like I don't mind doing like correspondent things or things where I can kind of be myself, but I'm very uncomfortable acting. Like I don't like being a character. And I get annoyed when sometimes when I write something, somebody be like, oh, you should play this part and you should. And I'm like, no, because I want it to be good. Like, I'm the terrible actor. Like, don't put me in that. So then I started as I was nearing the end of high school, deciding what school I wanted to go to. I went to Penn State in big part because my mom worked there. And then,
wait, quick tangent though, like in high school, you were a nerd or were you picked on?
So
did you have a tough life?
I was not picked on. I was definitely not a nerd. I was definitely not gay. And I'm still very not gay.
Okay. Some people go through a phase.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I still got lots of years left, so who knows? No, but the way I would describe myself in high school, I was by no means like a
goth.
No, I never went through a goth phase at all.
Well, you were rocking out to Korn?
Yeah, I loved Korn.
Okay. So you were like one of those like.
So
So you're clean cut corn listener, guys?
Yeah, I was pretty clean cut, and I wasn't a nerd, but I also wasn't like popular. I had a lot of friends, but what I felt, I could be social with different groups, but I wasn't a part of any one clique. It's like I could be friends with some of the band kids, but I wouldn't like go to the band kid parties because that was like their clique. And I was like friends with, some of the jocks. Like I could get along with them, but I wouldn't go to like the jocks.
Were you a partier? Do you have like
parties?
Do you go to parties?
Not like often, but I liked, being social and hang out. But I was kind of introverted and reserved, but I could make people laugh, and I liked socializing with people. I was in youth group in church. I had some friends from there, and I had neighbors that I lived with. I was friends with. Yeah, yep.
They should call it Luth Group.
We did not. We called it Yacht Club. Which stands.
Young. Let me guess.
Okay, yeah. Guess what? Yacht.
Young.
Club. Wrong so far.
Really?
Yeah.
Youth. Not advertising. Avenging.
No.
Avowing.
The A is just a conjunction. It's just a
and.
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
Christ.
No.
Really? Christian.
No.
I thought immediately C would be Christ, so now I'm like thrown off.
So it's church.
Oh, youth in church.
I don't think this is good podcast, so I'm just going to finish it.
You finish it?
I'm just going to get to the end of it. Youth in church here together is
here together. Okay.
Yeah, that was our youth group in church. I was in Boy Scouts. So I had a lot of friends from different social circles, but I wasn't necessarily like a part of a clique or
gotcha.
So
you had like a little friend, like two buddies or something.
I met the guy who's like still my best friend to this day. My friend Dan. He and I became friends in 6th grade. 6th grade was a very formative year for me. That's where I really.
Were you like the ringleader of your group, or kind of like one of the sidekicks?
I would say it would depend on what activity.
Okay.
Like when it came to like comedy and creative pursuits, like when I was in 6th grade, we'd start making little like sketches on our home camcorder, that we'd like show to the class, and sometimes we'd show them on like the morning announcements at school. They'd have us do like little comedy bits. So I kind of took the lead in that, but I don't know that I would say I was like the like social leader for other social events. And like in Boy Scouts, I had leadership positions in Boy Scouts at various times. I could take the lead when it was something I felt capable of, but I wasn't like the ringleader.
The ringleader. It's like every friend group was a ringleader.
And then I have a friend Aaron who lived down the street from me. He and I were friends for a long time. He passed away relatively young, like he was 35. Yeah. And I had some other friends that live. I grew up on a mountain in Pennsylvania, which they're not as high as the mountains out here. But we kind of grew up in the woods.
Like a hill limb?
You had 2 acres. Yeah, it would be like what you'd call,
hills have eyes.
I was like a hillbilly, like JD.
This is your elegy.
Yes, exactly. And then wait, what were you asking me? Initially, it was how I wanted to get into.
You wanted to be a comedian, yeah. So you started to get to college. Yep. And it's like, I don't know what kind of high school you were.
Yeah. And then I went to Penn State, majored in film and video production so I could learn about screenwriting, double majored in philosophy.
So you screenwriting?
Yeah, because it was more just to learn the script format, because they use pretty similar script format in TV and movies,
right? Even
though it's different style of
It's funny that like I write scripts for a living now and I've never gone to school.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get a degree, and like the philosophy part was just something I was kind of interested in. Huh. And then you can just get like a manual and kind of learn script format. But it was the only major that had anything to do with kind of getting into the creative aspects of like the television industry.
Learning like story structure and all that kind of stuff is good to know.
Exactly. And then stand-up was something I didn't start till later. Because I was a fan of stand-up, I always had some interest in it, but I didn't really get the urge to actually get up there and try it until I was living in New York when I started working for Conan. So.
Okay, you can ask me some questions, but I want to find out the very first time you tried stand-up after that.
Okay. I feel like I've told that story a lot on podcasts, but I can't
remember if you told that. I want to talk more about like...
So here's the thing. I know you mentioned Axe Cop a lot, and I know what it is, and I've looked it up and watched episodes, and I kind of know the story of it. But what is the story of the inception of Axe Cop? And is that something you wanted to do, or did you have jobs before that were not entertainment related?
So X-Cop came at a time when I had been in California for a year. I had moved to California because I had gotten my first TV show option in Cartoon Network.
So how did you get into writing originally?
I was in comics. I always loved comics. I've always loved indie comics where, like, as opposed to like a Marvel or a DC, they hire the best writer and then they hire the best penciler and they hire the best inker and they put it all on Batman. In indie comics, it's like this. Usually the same guy draws it, writes it. It's a Ninja Turtles came out of. It's Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird made it. It's indie. It's a black and white generally. So I was getting into indie comics, and I was a huge fan of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Also, he made Invader Zim, Jonan Vasquez. These kind of goth comics.
The only comics, so I wasn't a big comic book person. I think the only comic books I had growing up were, remember for a while at Pizza Hut, you would get free X-Men comics.
Yes.
I think those were the only comics I had growing up. Yeah.
I used to go to 7-Eleven and get Ninja Turtle. Turtle comics were the thing I got obsessed with Ninja Turtles.
So that's interesting. You were a 7-Eleven kid because I was also.
I walked to the 7-Eleven.
The 7-Eleven.
It was pretty far for me.
The 7-Eleven was in downtown Macungie, and you're a few years older than me, but did they have this? That was my first video rental place. They used to have
7-Eleven did?
Yes, they had video rentals at the 7-Eleven in Macungie.
There was near the 7-Eleven a video store. There's a local one. So anyway, and Ninja Turtles was the gateway into indie comics because they were an indie comic and then they had their own indie series. I discovered at a pretty young age all these amazing black and white artists because once the Ninja Turtles guys got big, they had all these awesome indie artists doing their comics. So that's kind of got me into that world. So I made it into that Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. This is the comic that I loved. The publisher of that picked up my comic, which is much later in life. I'm like early 20s. But it was I had already spent 2 years on a graphic novel that nothing happened with. I'd worked on many other comics for low pay. But this one, the significance of this one was it didn't do great, but number one, it put me on a label and got me connected with a bunch of people. And that guy who was one of my heroes at the time, Jonan Vasquez, he snuck a copy of my book. And then suddenly one day a review of my work showed up on his blog.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, if you printed it out, it had to be like 8 or 9 pages long. It was so long and so complimentary, saying like, this guy is like, it made my day. And in a way you could never imagine, like to have someone you looked up to through high school write that about your work.
I'm a professional writer, but as somebody who writes sketches and monologues, I don't think I've written anything 8 pages long in my life.
Yeah, no,
It sounds so boring.
He goes on, and it was like, and maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's long.
Yeah.
But it felt amazing. So anyway, through having a comic on that label, Cartoon Network does send people to conventions. Oh, and my comic was nominated for an Eisner, which is basically sort of the Emmy Awards of comics.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
It was nominated for comedy and didn't win, but so that slightly put me on the map just enough to where I started having Cartoon Network guys would show up and be like, "Hey, you guys got who's new here?" or whatever, and the boss would be like, "Oh, check out Ethan Nicolle." And so I met a guy.
What era of Cartoon Network is this? Like, what were some of the big shows on there at the time? Because I remember, like, I used to watch like Space Ghost.
This is like mid 2000 or
okay,
2006, 7. I know Dexter's Lab was big, but I can't remember Samurai Jack.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
right, yep.
I never felt quite in tune with Cartoon Network. Like never had a show that was like that is great, except for Samurai Jack. I love Samurai Jack. Anyway, so that's what got me in the door, and I started pitching to Cartoon Network. And it was actually the second pitch that I pitched. They optioned it, and that's what got me. I had been being mentored by Doug TenNapel.
Who I
started as a fan.
I was not aware of this guy until you started talking about it, but I loved Earthworm Jim growing up. That was it was like my favorite video game.
Yeah, so I loved Earthworm Jim, and then my very first time going to Comic-Con, I happened to, I went to the comic convention to wait in lines I had a whole huge portfolio. It's the biggest convention in the world, basically, one of the biggest event in entertainment, in pop culture. Waiting in lines to show my portfolio to all these big wigs at Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, and stuff. I learned very quickly that it was the hope. Number one, you're up against the greatest artists on earth.
Yeah.
I'm a kid from Coos Bay with my crappy portfolio.
Coos Bay.
Coos Bay is the town I'm from. Yeah. I was making fun of your town name. We both have
Macungie. Fun town names.
Yeah, Coos Bay.
Yeah.
And So I kind of finally got really dejected because the couple of times I've made it through like the 3 or 4 hour wait before I finally got up there, and they just kind of like shrugged at my work, like they're exhausted. They've been looking at the same stuff all day, and I'm not impressive.
Now, at that point in this part of your career, was this an industry pitching this kind of thing? Did you have an agent, or did you need an agent, or were you just kind of trying to make it on your own through your own connections?
The moment that I got an agent was when so I'm kind of jumping around the timeline. When I was trying to get my portfolio looked at, that was before all this.
Okay.
This is back to like just, I
see.
was like 19. So yeah, when I got the show option, that's what got me an agent.
I see.
And really that's like the myth about agents for me.
Yeah.
Like they jump on that heat.
Yep.
And then really like they're just there to like kind of bank on like whatever you pull off. Like they're not finding you anything.
100%.
Yeah.
It's such a scam. I don't
in the sense that because
like I still need to get an agent.
You get some kind of clout by having an agent to some extent. If it's a company that's known, like they go, oh, Gotham or whatever. But like
there are good agents out there. But a lot of them, it's just somebody. They wait till you build everything on your own and either have some momentum or sell a project, and then they offer to represent you.
Yeah.
And then they get 10%.
Then they get the money.
Whereas, when you are in those moments when you're struggling or looking for more work, it's like that's when you wish it had an agent that would kind of advocate for you and help you get things pitched. Now, but like they kind of wait until you've done the work,
right?
And then move in. And
anyway, so yeah, I jumped around a lot about that, but I'll just let you. Where should we go from there?
No, that was interesting. Yeah, because I never knew about and
so I was trying to get from.
I asked you about the origin.
I ended up in California.
The origin of
XCOP.
XCOP.
I was getting to that because how do you get? It's hard to explain. Like everybody's story is different. How do you get to from us? Because I remember when I told my dad, Carson Network optioned my show.
Yeah.
It actually like the look.
And
on
he
his
was
face,
like, "You're my favorite of my 17 children."
Well, we were on Skype, and he just looked. Not just shocked, but like he didn't know, like a certain thing about reality that he knew to be true had become not true, like that dreams don't come true or something. He was just like, huh, and like, but I mean, of course, the truth about getting your show options is it doesn't mean you got a show. It means they're gonna, you know how it works.
Yeah.
But
I always
just to be recognized by Cartoon Network, sent a paycheck by Cartoon Network.
Yeah,
felt like it was time to move to California. So I'd spent a year here trying to, the show fizzled out that I got optioned. I'd been working on another graphic novel and working. I finally it wasn't working. And I shelved it, started working on a different one. And I finally just started to kind of like, I had gotten 2 jobs. I was working for Disney, but it was like the lamest Disney job you could have. I was working on ESL books, English as a second language, where they just take scenes from movies and translate it. You just basically trace frames from the movies and place them in these books. Oh, it's just very tedious work, joyless, tedious work. And then I also, so that was a full-time job.
I just picture you tracing happy, smiling characters, just completely joyless.
Yeah, no, because you're not, there's nothing
Disney
creative about it. Yeah.
And just drawing, and you're just depressed. And
it's bland. It's just not, you're not creating, tracing. And then I also was working on Flash animation, also the most tedious, boring version of Flash animation you can do, where I'm animating complicated math problems for a tutorial. Math tutorials.
That sounds terrible.
These complicated, make the numbers jump down here and carry the 2. And, and you'd have to do like a bunch of these every day.
Did you learn a lot of math from?
No, I didn't learn any of it. It was the most tedious, but like I was doing okay financially. And then both those jobs in the same week laid me off. So I suddenly had no job.
Oh, okay.
So it was during that month. It was around Christmas. I went to visit my family. I felt so burnt out.
Was this in Coos Bay?
So this is in Moses Lake. Where it was my dad.
That's where he moved to.
The younger, because I always like to be with my younger siblings for Christmas, because I had these cute little sisters, and then Malachi, this little bundle. He was 5, he was 5 at the time. And I loved drawing Malachi or whatever, but I kind of just swore off working on comics or any kind of trying to make it stuff. And I really kind of just tried to go like, I'm just gonna have fun for Christmas and go back to the misery of what what's happened. And we did XCOP, and I didn't think I made 1 page of XCOP with him there, and then it was so funny to me. I drew it so sloppily. It was something purely I thought for the family, and but we cried laughing at it. I have found so much joy in making it that every night whenever I went to bed, I would work on the next one. I'd write the notes down during the day with him. We play and turn that playtime plus all my questions for him to put it all together into a story, and then I'd make that into a comic that night. And to me, it was like a thing where like showing somebody a picture of your kids. It's cute to you, you know, no one else cares. Me and my buddy thought it was funny, and I thought, well, he knows Malachi, so my little brother. So I had my other comic.
That's how open mics are for me as a comedian sometimes.
The joke's funny to you.
It's cute to me, but no one else cares.
I feel like that's the scary thing about every joke you come up with, right?
Well, that's why you
have to try.
Mics are for. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so long story short, even though it's already long, we put it up as a test because we were working on my other comic, Bearmageddon, which was my big epic apocalyptic horror comedy about bears taking over the world. Before we launched that, me and my buddy who I make webcomics with, or my first time doing a webcomic, we're like, why don't we try some things out? So we did this like Flash interface. We launched Axe Cop, and just by some fluke, I don't know how I did, it went viral. Like we launched the website, and like 2 days later, it just went full on viral.
So that's the origin of Axe Cop. It's something that went viral. So
yeah, and I had like 5 pages of
wow, that's cool.
And it went, and like to the point, like crazy celebrities were messaging me and like talking to me. It was nuts.
And it was viral just from your website, or were there like platforms like YouTube, social media platforms at that time?
The big thing that happened was, it was a couple of like big, like Boing Boing, I think was one of them. A couple of these big blogs, like
You're
tech
just making
blogs.
up words. And it was Boing Boing.
I think Boing Boing was like really popular at the time, maybe. I don't know. Matt might know. He's a nerd.
It sounds familiar, but I don't think.
But I think it was Boing Boing. But anyway, also Entertainment Weekly listed as their website of the day.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah,
nice.
That's pretty wild.
That is.
Oh, and Wired posted a big thing.
Some of the celebrities you heard from at that time.
Around that, Simon Pegg.
Wow.
And those guys around him. Rob Thomas, is that Thomas? Anyone here? Anyone who was thinking about somebody else?
Maybe, I don't know.
Rob. Matchbox 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's the right name.
I think so. Anyway, I feel like at the time, that's a pretty big singer.
At first, I was picturing Dave Thomas, the Wendy's clone.
Who?
At first, I was picturing Dave Thomas, the Wendy's.
Oh. Is anyone here? Who else? I don't know. It's all blur. Well, the big one for me was the Mystery Science Theater guys. I love them. So there's a lot of nerd celebrities. Nice. You know, like the... So I became friends with all those guys. That's Mike Nelson's like a close friend now. That was just wild. But gosh, who else? It got so many. It was just a wild time. It was like, I always describe it as if you're watching TV and then all of a sudden everyone on TV looks at you and acknowledges that you're watching and starts talking to you. That's what it felt like. Twitter suddenly became... That
sounds like psychosis. It's like scary. The people on the TV are talking to me.
But on Twitter. So like suddenly on Twitter, you're being acknowledged by all these... accounts that you just followed for fun, and now they're talking about you.
Yeah.
One of those, I'm trying to think of other bigger ones that people would know. And I know,
those are all, I think,
Patton, Nick Offerman.
Very cool.
Gosh, you watched UC, is he UCB?
Upright Citizens Brigade.
Ken Marino?
No, he wasn't one of the main people on there. I don't know if he was on there.
I know he's from one of those troops.
I know who he is, yeah.
But yeah, he was a big fan of Axe Cop. He wanted to be Axe Cop. He ended up becoming Fluke Cop. And Nick Offerman became Axe Cop.
Yeah.
But
wow.
Anyway, yeah.
Very cool.
It was a wild ride. It was fun. It was a crazy 2 or 3 years of just craziness.
Now do you have any questions?
I was like the Hawk Twa girl of webcomics.
Oh man, we couldn't get through it without mentioning her.
I have like a weird sympathy for that. Just because I've gone viral and I know like the weird whirlwind that it is. It's not the same level at all, but like
I think what I feel bad for her is the thing the thing that she went viral for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Crass sexual
thing. So crass.
That she was drunk and out and this guy asked her a question and then it went
and just
that's what you're known for. And I think she seems to be handling it well so far.
Yeah,
but
she is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So what was I gonna ask you? Oh yeah, so your first time doing stand-up.
Yes.
So, what broke the camel's back that you decided finally I'm going to do this? Because I think that's the hardest.
Yeah. So
do you have a friend get you to do it or like?
No, actually. So when I first started, finally decided to do stand-up, around the time that I moved to New York in 2005 to intern for Conan, and then got hired there full time in 2006. And when I was living in New York, I had in the back of my head, I always knew, like I said, the goal at that point was like, I would love to write for SNL. That was like the dream comedy writer job for me. And at Conan, we were like one floor above SNL. So we could watch the rehearsals. I got to meet people that worked there and stuff. It was so cool. But I had in the back of my mind for a while, even though comedy writing was my main thing, I always thought stand-up, it looked like something that I could do. Like, because I saw other people doing it. And I was a big fan of stand-up, and I'd go to stand-up shows. I was nervous about trying it, but when I decided, it might be something that I would like to do, I started writing down jokes in like notebooks.
How long have you been prepping to the first one?
I wrote down jokes in notebooks for 3 years. Okay, before I ever got the nerve to go on stage. I wrote down joke ideas in notebooks for 3 years. I had probably.
And had you ever read them to anybody yet?
No, I'd never read them to anybody. I never told them to anybody. I never told anybody I wanted to do stand-up. Wow. Like, it was just a thing that was.
I can relate to that.
In the back of my head.
That's how I am.
That it was like, oh, this is maybe something that I could do, and it looks like it might be fun. And then there was the writer's strike in 2007, when Conan and all the late night shows, they went off the air for 2 weeks. And at the time, I had just gone through like a breakup that was very hard, and I was like out of work, and I was kind of like depressed at the time. I wasn't like, deeply depressed, but I was kind of down and not, there was nothing to do during the day. And at the time, the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in New York, they had a lot of cool shows there because they were like an improv theater. They also taught sketch writing. There was this very cool show. I think they still do it, the one in New York and out here. Although the one in New York it closed for a while, and then I think it reopened somewhere else. But it was called ASCAT, and it was an improv show where like the SNL cast would come, and writers from Conan and The Daily Show would come, and they would do improv scenes together. And at the time, Amy Poehler and Horatio Sands would host it every weekend. So I had a lot of friends. We would hang out at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater a lot. And then I saw that they had an open mic there. I think it was called Gut Bucket, if I remember correctly. It was at midnight on a Saturday or Sunday. And the host at the time was Pete Holmes, who was very early in his stand-up career, but he hosted this open mic that you'd come by at midnight and put your name in the bucket. And then at like 12:30, they'd draw names. And then at like 1 a.m, this open mic would start. And it was the Upright Citizens Brigade. There was under Gristides grocery store in New York. There was bags tied to the pipes in the ceiling to keep water from the pipes for the grocery store from like dripping into the theater.
Jeez.
And my name got pulled. Now, there's two different strategies when you're first starting stand-up. Some people their first time like to invite a bunch of friends and family so they have support. I was of the other mind where I was like, I am not telling anyone I'm doing this because if it sucks and I'm terrible,
so you went all
I will pretend that it never happened. I won't ever tell anyone.
I guess you've been on stage before to some extent.
Not really. I wasn't. I mean, like
at Conan, did you do anything? So were you in front of people a little bit?
When you were interning or working for Conan, they would use you in the background of sketches sometimes. So I was like an extra.
You were like
sketches. I got slapped by Martha Stewart one time. There was a thing where there were all these rumors that Martha Stewart's like mean, and there was a bit where when she was walking out, she was the guest on Conan that day, and they said, look at all her assistants she had come with her. And it was just a line of like 20 of us in the hallway, and she just walked down and slapped us all as she walked by to go on stage. So I was in the background as like an extra in sketches like that. But no, I wasn't, like when I was in church, when I was a kid, I'd like act in the church plays. And like I said, when me and my friends would make sketches for our classmates, like with our video camera, but I wasn't like a public speaker or an actor or performer in any great capacity. That was pretty much my first time really kind of being on stage. Yeah. And it was very nerve-wracking. It was only 5 minutes that I had to do.
You shaking?
I wrote 5 minutes of jokes. I wasn't shaking, but I was very nervous before I went up. Pete Holmes, introduced me. I went up. I did my 5 minutes. I remember most of the jokes did well. They had a great audience that night. It was like some nights it wasn't a good audience. There's like probably 40 or 50 people in there.
Yeah,
so it's a
commonly at an open mic, it's other comics reading their notes.
Yeah, exactly. got up on stage, did my jokes. Most of them got laughs, maybe one or two didn't. And I wouldn't say by any means that I killed the first time.
Yeah.
But I did good. Like I could tell, like I got laughs. Yeah. And there was also this moment when I walked off stage, like how prior to that I'd been like, oh, maybe this is something I want to try. Maybe this is something I do. It was instant, like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like as soon as I got off stage, it was like, oh, that's the best thing ever. It was like, that is. How was I not doing this? This is what I need to do. And so it was now like 2 a.m. and I remember calling my parents, like as I was getting on the subway. Coming out. And I was so excited. I was like, you guys, I just did stand-up comedy. And it was like 2 a.m. for them in Kunji. And they're like, oh, okay, good. And I go, no, it was so much fun. They're like, oh, this is cool. That's great. And my parents, they have been very supportive of me and they'll come out to my shows. But it was like, I didn't feel like in that moment, there was some other friend I think I called at the time. I think I might have called or tried to call, because I said I was going through a breakup at the time. It was kind of like in process. I might have called that girl also to tell her that I had done
it. I thought maybe this is part of the breakup. You were kind of getting a little nuts. And
no, it was just
doing emotional
I was just
things.
like, it was just like people that I had. I felt that feeling of like, this is what I want to do. There was this instant feeling of like, it's 2 a.m, but I have to tell people.
That's
I have
amazing.
to tell people this was like so cool. And it was like, oh, and I love this. So I had this moment where I wanted to call people and tell them, and I made these 2 phone calls. And like I said, my parents were supportive, but I didn't feel in that moment that anyone got like how big a deal this was for me. But it was like, I knew like, oh, this is what I want to do now. So then I started doing open mics. That first time, like
how old were you again?
I would have been 20, let me think. This would have been 05, 07. So I would have been 23.
Okay.
Yeah. It was in November of 2007, I think, that I started. So I was 23 or 24. And I started hitting open mics. That first time, like I said, went good. I thought, oh, I can do this. The next weekend, I signed up for an open mic at Maui Taco, which was a taco stand near Central Penn Station in New York. That was the open mic that you're talking about, where it was just other comics.
Okay.
And it was a very small crowd. And at the beginning of the mic, there was a group of exchange students from England that were there, maybe 8 of them. And they were an okay audience, but they weren't laughing at a whole lot. And there was like 3 comics that went up. And then the host, who was this like aging comic who had done the Edinburgh Fest like years ago, he decided to do like 20 minutes, which you're not supposed to do as a host.
Yeah.
But he was not used to having real audience at his mic, and he wanted to take advantage of it. So he did 20 minutes. He goes, are you guys ready for your next comic? And they go, we got to get going.
Oh gosh.
And so the entire audience got up and left. And this is only my second time at a mic. So I think, oh, the audience is gone. I guess the mic's over.
Yeah.
And they go, no, we still perform and support each other. And I was like, all right. So I got up there in front of 3 comics who had just not done very well and this host. And I remember saying the first joke, and the host, they were sitting in the front row, and the host just looks up and he goes, it's funny. And in my head, I remember thinking,
no,
I still remember the line. I remember actively thinking, oh, that's how this is going to be.
Yeah.
And I did 10 minutes. This was a longer set to absolute silence, just them staring at me. And then I think maybe one other comic went up after me. And then I was kind of trying to like pack up my notes because it was just excruciating. And then the host comes over and he goes, are you new at this? And he was very like condescending. And I was like, yeah, this is my second time. He's, oh, because your stuff really needs work. Do you want to work on it? And I was like, nah, not really. He goes, no, read me your jokes. He made me read back every joke again, the whole 10 minutes just to him. And this time he would go, no, that one works. Oh, I guess that one's all right.
Oh gosh,
no, that
mentoring you.
Oh yeah, that one's okay. And now he decided they were all okay, even though nobody laughed at them before. And so that was my second time. And then from there, it was kind of up and down. And I probably did it 4 or 5 times before I started inviting friends to come out and see me. And yeah, it just became something I loved.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to get into a bit, because I think our listeners, I know they're interested to hear from a perspective of being somebody that's a Christian or somebody who's a conservative, being in this industry. We can get into that a little bit in the subscriber portion.
Yeah.
And we'll tell our stories.
Yes, we got to get to our stories in the subscriber portion.
So we'll do that too. So thanks for listening to this very special episode.
You and I have gotten to know each other better, and hopefully our audience has gotten to know us a little bit better.
Yeah. It's fun. Hopefully. Hope you liked it. Different episode. But it's a getting to know you episode.
Yes.
Next time we have to record a backup, we'll tell more of the story.
Exactly.
We can turn it into a special series. All right. Well, please remember to like and subscribe and comment and all those things. It helps us out so much. We thank you guys we thank Austin Robertson and Matt and everybody who helps make the show.
And viewers like you, the listeners who make time in their day to tune into our podcast every week. Over and out.
The Talk Down is filmed in a dark room in front of a couple of fake plants. For more information or to become a subscriber, go to thetalkdown.com.